IB Nation Sports Talk up and rolling on a Tuesday, along with Ryan Roberts. I'm Sean Stiers. I was just giving you all the details. We had a power outage. We had some storms roll through the area today, so a good deal of the area around us has been without power, I guess, for most of the day. And then all of a sudden, these trucks show up and they're working on some lines across the street and say, oh, they must be trying to bring the power back up. Well, lo and behold, it knocked ours off for almost an hour. And until about 10 minutes ago, I was setting up my patio to do an outdoor show today. And then the power came right back on right before the show started. So here I am.
Well, Sean, not quite to the degree that you are dealing with, but yesterday we also had some storms where there was heavy winds. So
Yeah.
The fun time of a 15-minute drive home from daycare, which now turns into a 45-minute drive because there's a couple of roads that are closed because there's branches everywhere with a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old, and the 1-year-old, mind you, hates the car. Like hates the car. Does not like for
Really?
a split set. Oh, dude, she'll be happy if she has some type of snack or something, or there's a toy that gets her attention for a couple minutes. But eventually she's in the phase of, I'm going to throw everything because I get super bored easily, and then I'm going to scream the rest of the car ride. That is my 1-year-old right now.
Oh, man. That's funny because when Jesse was a young pup still, like the way I would calm him down, like his mom would be at work and I'd be home alone, just Jesse and I chilling in the house. He was a very fussy young man. That may shock you to find out, but when he would get the fussies, we'd get in the car seat and go crank some Aerosmith and drive around town, and that would actually chill him out a little bit. I'm disappointed that he didn't turn into an Aerosmith fan down the line, but
I might use the fussies with my kids. I like that. That's a good name. Oh, congratulations, by the way. Jesse's getting married. That's incredible.
He is.
Pretty cool.
He is. Yeah. Yep. Just made it official not quite a week ago. Maybe about a week ago. I think it might have been a week ago today, actually.
Well, I should know this, but will this be your first time being an in-law then? Will this be
the
first time?
He's the eldest son. That's right.
Nice. Okay. All right. How's that feel? Is that like a rite of passage thing, or is that like I don't know.
I think we're all pretty excited. Everybody likes her, and they've been dating for 4 years now, and I know his mother is very happy about the whole situation. I know her mother is very happy about the whole situation. I don't know. I haven't heard from the dad. We'll have to get Jesse's side of that. He'll be in rapid fire a little bit later on, and we'll get Jesse's version of all the events that happened on his proposal.
Well, congratulations to your family, man. I know that's a big moment.
Thank you.
For sure. So congratulations.
Yes. I think there's we'll have to see. I haven't checked in with him in a while. There'd been some talk about when the nuptials might take place and all that kind of stuff. We'll have to see. It's only been a week, like I said, so we'll have to see if they've made any progress along those lines. Also after Ryan is done here, we've got an interview with Notre Dame women's basketball player Liza Carlin, the graduate transfer from Marquette. We'll be talking with her in a little bit. She picked Notre Dame ultimately over UConn. So that was an interesting part of the conversation that we had earlier today. So we'll hear kind of some of the details about what she liked more about Notre Dame than UConn when she comes up.
It's pretty good choices, though, isn't it? Notre Dame or UConn and women's basketball. It's pretty good.
Yeah, and like she was telling me this time around, she had Division I offers across a lot of different places, Wisconsin, Marquette, those kind of schools, but the caliber of school that she was hearing from as a grad transfer, she said was significantly higher than when she was coming out of high school. So it was pretty exciting for her.
It's crazy how that happens. I mean, I was actually talking to Brian, I think, earlier about the defensive tackle that LSU got in the portal this offseason from Grand Valley States, right? Where it's just like you had no options basically coming out of high school. You ended up going D2. Now, a very good D2 program, but you still ended up going D2. And you, in one offseason, now jumping from D2 to SEC ball. Like that's wild to think about. He had like 40 something offers
No kidding.
in this cycle, which is just kind of crazy to think about. Yeah.
That's almost like going even from a Grand Valley State or a Troy or an Emporia State to the NFL, just making that leap, as much as you might excel at that level. But to make that, I've always thought about that, where some of these guys are probably lucky if they've got 15,000 in the stands, and the next thing you know, they're playing in front of sold out NFL stadiums. Some of them obviously, like a Larry Allen, for example, played at a really small school, Sonoma, I believe it was Sonoma State, and then ends up winning a Super Bowl and all that kind of stuff. Crazy.
It's a crazy jump, man. It's a crazy jump. I think the good news is for him, not to get into the weeds on Suggs, the transfer to LSU from what I say, Saginaw Valley State, right? I think it was where he's from. Grand Valley State. Yeah. So he's from Grand Valley State. The good news is that I believe he only has junior eligibility this year. So like LSU can kind of ease him along, get that second year. I don't even know if he's able to redshirt or not, but that might just be a good multi-year investment if you're going to make that type of jump. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt. All right. So we've got the Liza Carlin interview coming up in a little bit. We've got rapid fire and Jesse, a lot of stuff we're going to get to there. Let's start with some Notre Dame recruiting stuff, though, because, there's a lot going on still with this 2025 class. And the theme today is can't miss 2025 recruits, as in these are the guys that Notre Dame can't afford to miss, right?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I think as we've gotten closer to the end of this, right, Sean? We're sitting here with 21 commits for Notre Dame in the 2025 class. And we know that Notre Dame historically has recruited early in the process. Last year, you were recruiting a couple guys like Nandi Akboko, trying to flip him from Georgia during the season. But for the most part, the end of summer, you knew who your class was going to be in 2024, and I think Notre Dame is aiming to do the same in 2025. Like if a Nathaniel Wusu-Boateng or somebody else that might be a flip candidate want to take their recruitment into the summer, I think they'll stay on those types of guys. But for the most part, they want to have the almost entirety of their 2025 class finalized by the end of summer. So as the board is getting smaller, it starts to shrink. I think that's where the margin for error lessens, and guys now, you don't have a ton of options on the board, right? For like certain positions, you need to kind of not hit an inside straight. I don't think that's the right term because there are some options on the board, but I do think as the board gets smaller, it makes certain players can't miss players because you just don't have a ton of numbers anymore. You're kind of betting on yourself down the stretch a little bit.
Yeah. So there are a couple of receivers who are at the top of this can't miss list. And it kind of like Derek Meadows is someone we've talked a little bit more about. I don't think we've talked as much about Dylan Robinson. I'm sure you have on some of your shows, and I've seen some stuff on the Champions Lounge and stuff like that. I wanted to ask you about Dylan Robinson because it sounds like some schools are recruiting this guy to play defense. Notre Dame wants him to play receiver. So how important is that aspect? Like how important is playing wide receiver in college to Robinson?
It's a great question, Sean, because I really wanted to group Derek Meadows and Dylan Robinson together because there's a little bit of varying opinions on both. But I think what people can agree on is that Notre Dame in the 2025 class needs to find an outside-oriented vertical receiver. Like you need to find that type of guy. And that's Meadows that we've talked about a ton. And that's also Dylan Robinson, who is Laverne, California, Bonita wide receiver, the 2025 class, 6'2", 190 pounds. To answer your question, I would say the top three schools for Dylan Robinson in no particular order are Notre Dame, UCLA, and Washington. Now, to your point, funny enough, both UCLA and Washington are recruiting him to play defensive back because if you watch him on film, he is a dynamic wide receiver, but he also plays corner for Bonita. I think that he has a projection that he could play outside corner. I think he could play safety. He can play all over the place, right? So those two teams, I believe, because I just had an update on him at irishbreakdown.com. I believe if I remember correctly, Washington is the one that is saying, we want you to play defensive back, but we'll give you a chance to maybe get some reps at receiver at some points. So that's kind of their pitch. Okay. UCLA is solely, we want you to be a weapon in the secondary. We want you to play every spot back there. We want you to be kind of a versatile move player. And Notre Dame is the one that is recruiting him solely offensively. You're a wide receiver. I don't think he has a preference. I've talked to him a little bit about it in the past. He has kind of told me, and it's a cliche. So like sometimes it's the truth, sometimes it's stretching a little bit. But from his words, he doesn't care what position he plays. He just wants to play. He's an athlete. He likes defensive back. He likes wide receiver. I don't think ultimately the position is going to deter Dylan Robinson from picking a school. I think ultimately it's going to be a decision between what is best for him and his family short and long term. That's the difference of pitches that you've now heard, because Notre Dame's pitch is, we want you to be a deep threats. We want you to be a one-on-one guy that can beat man coverage. Like that's our pitch to you on the field. But each one of these schools is also pitching what off the field can bring as well. So I think Notre Dame will be in it for that reason until the end. It's ultimately is going to be a decider of what he feels like he is most comfortable, where he is most comfortable being at. I don't think it really matters what position it's ultimately going to be.
Okay. I wanted to ask you, Salty threw this one in here, and I wanted to ask you about Ivan Taylor. And you know, I know he made the visits recently to Alabama and Michigan.
Yes, sir.
Where would you put Ivan Taylor? He's obviously committed, but there's, you know, with these visits and stuff like that going on, there's obviously a lot of doubt with exactly what's going to happen there. So what's your feeling? I know you talked to Ivan Taylor recently.
I did. So we had an update on the message board at board.com. So like this wouldn't be breaking news to anybody that's over there on the board. I just wanted to put it out quite simply like this, Sean. When he was about to take his visit to Notre Dame a couple weekends ago, I talked to Ivan before that for a kind of a visit preview about his trip to Alabama, right? Talked to him about Alabama, how was Tuscaloosa, all that type of stuff. Well, I was chatting with him yesterday, just asking him, you know, how was Ann Arbor? What was that like? You know, what was Michigan like? Because I believe, unless I'm mistaken, that was his first time to Ann Arbor, I believe, right? So I put on the message board quite simply on this is where I am with the Ivan Taylor situation, because we have from the start have reported I'm skeptical. Brian is skeptical, but Notre Dame feels okay with where they're at. Okay. That's kind of been the vibe, right? On that side of things. My impulse, right? It was when the Alabama stuff was reported and I verified it. I'm like, that's not good, right? Like that's bad. I don't like that. And then when I heard that he also had set up another one to Michigan, I was like, I think this is over. Like, I think it's over. Too many eyes are open now, and he's taken too many deeper dives at schools. Like this is unsettling to me a little bit, right? I will say this though. After talking to him both about his Alabama trip in the past and his Michigan trip this past weekend officially, I feel better about Notre Dame standing with Ivan Taylor than I did previously. I'll put it like that. I'm not in the business of predicting that he ultimately does stick, but the deeper I dig into this one, I become a little bit more okay with Notre Dame standing. I become a little bit more positive with Notre Dame standing. I would not be shocked at this point if he does stick with Notre Dame in the long term. It is still going to be a fight. You're still going to have to convince him. I mean, this is what this whole process is. I think Ivan, and I put this out in the universe, so this isn't news, I think he committed too early. Like, I just do. I think he committed a little bit too early. He didn't see everything. So he's going out and seeing things now. And, you know, the process is a little bit flawed in my opinion. But I do believe after hearing just kind of his thoughts on these visits, I think Notre Dame is still leading this guy, right? I think Notre Dame is still setting the standard in this recruitment. So you're going to have to continue to prove it down the stretch, but I am a lot less skeptical than what I was before this past weekend, over the last couple weeks. I think Notre Dame has a chance to solidify things with Ivan Taylor and ultimately keep him in the class.
Okay. So how about another safety, Jadon Blair? Any big, what are the, you know, sort of potential hurdles maybe that Notre Dame needs to clear with him?
I love that you asked me about Ivan Taylor, because Ivan Taylor it makes Jadon Blair even more important, right? Because ultimately, if he doesn't end up in the class, Jadon Blair is an elite level player in 2025, in my opinion, and that would be a great. You need to be able to, if Ivan Taylor doesn't end up in the class, you need to close in Jadon Blair. Like, you just need to. That's why I phrase him now as a can't miss player. He's not just insurance. He is a amazing, amazing football player that if you get both Ivan and Jadon, that is one of the best safety duos you have recruited in a single class in a long time, like in a very long time. But I think especially with Ivan's standing and kind of a little bit of uneasiness, I think Jadon Blair is an absolute must get in this class because, Sean, you just don't have 6'4", 190-pound safeties that move like him, dude. Like, you just don't have it.
No, you don't.
Notre Dame has had one, right?
That's right.
But
That's right.
we always want more of that, right? Because you
Yes.
know, watching Kyle Hamilton, you just watched him and you just knew that was a different type of athlete. Like, it was
unicorns only come along. That's why they're unicorns, you know?
Exactly. and I think that Notre Dame has been front running on this one for a while now, right? So he's gone to Michigan. He's gone to Penn State this past weekend. He had an official visit to South Carolina and Florida State. That's been his official visits outside of Notre Dame. I still believe coming out of those visits, Sean, Notre Dame is the front runner. Barring a major setback down the stretch here, because he's going to make a decision on July 5th publicly, a commitment, I do think that Notre Dame is absolutely the team to beat, and you need to finish this one if you're Notre Dame, because Jadon Blair is not only a elite level talent, in my opinion, he is also the insurance you need just in case things do go south with Ivan Taylor.
Okay. Stick on the defensive side of the ball. And I've seen a couple people asking about Nathaniel Owusu-Boateng, who, of course, is Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah's younger brother. And then Madden, say his last name, because I just butchered Jadon Blair's name. Faramo. Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. I'm not used to talking about these guys enough. I see, I've got the names written down. But okay, so what's up with those two guys? Notre Dame has obviously been in on them for a while.
Yeah, I think that it's can't miss, in my opinion, to get one of those guys. You need to get one of them for sure. You would love to get two, and Notre Dame is going to push for two, so don't get this twisted. But right now, you have Anthony Sackett, Josiah Key in the class. If you get to three with one of those two, you're good. It's a very good class at that point. But Notre Dame would like to get both Faramo and Nathaniel Owusu-Boateng. I would say this, Sean, from the standing perspective of how Notre Dame is sitting, I was surprised after Madden Faramo had canceled his Ohio State visit 2 weekends ago after Notre Dame that he took his visit to Texas. I honestly had a feeling that like maybe he just wouldn't show up to Texas, and that would obviously tell you that Notre Dame's standing is very good. Ultimately, I still do believe Notre Dame is in a great spot with Madden Faramo. I think they are the team to beat without question. I am less optimistic about Nathaniel Owusu-Boateng. I still think Notre Dame has a slight lead there. I do believe that on the Notre Dame side, they are very positive with where things stand with Nathaniel. And every time you hear Nathaniel talk about Notre Dame, I understand why. He preaches family, and obviously, that obvious family tie is very easy to see. So I think Notre Dame has a chance to close on both of them. But as long as they get one, I'm happy. If they get both, I'm ecstatic. That's the point we're at. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Good deal. Let's go back to Ivan Taylor, because Brent threw a question up there. If Notre Dame were to only close on either Ivan Taylor or Deuce Knight, what is the preference? And I mean,
you don't need
go ahead, because I see the look on your face. I mean, are we still in on this Ole Miss stuff is mostly smoke, no fire?
I mean, it's been pushed out every once in a while. Then you hear Deuce talk to anybody, and you're just kind of like, I don't know where the.
And he keeps showing up at Notre Dame. Was he here again last weekend or the weekend before that? After camp.
He was there for the official visits, and then he was there for the Irish invasion as well this offseason.
Mm-hmm.
And Sean, he's down at one of these rival camps interviewing Noah Grubbs for fun, right? Where it's just like, guys, I told everybody this from the starts. I am not worried about Deuce Knights until I have to be worried about Deuce Knights. I'm not worried about Deuce at all flipping, like at all right now. If he sets up a visit and things change, go south, then we'll report it. But like nobody on my side, on Notre Dame's side, on Deuce Knight's side, like nobody is skeptical right now of Notre Dame standing with Deuce Knight. Like nobody is, right? So I understand the premise of Brent's question, and it's fair to a degree, right? But I don't think you need to close on Deuce Knight. You are where you always have been and where you always need to be. You need to close, per se, on Ivan Taylor to make him know that he needs to be in this class. So out of that possibility, it's Ivan Taylor, because I think he's the only one that you really do need to close on at the moment.
Great breakdown there. I just think that until signing day actually shows up, there's just going to be a heck of a lot of hand wringing on Deuce.
Yeah. Well, it's so funny too, because he keeps going to all these events. He went down to OT7, he went to the Elite 11. And Sean, honestly, I'm not gonna I will never try to make a claim that someone is attempting clickbait because they have different sources and I don't know what they know and all that type of stuff, right? But I do think it's very odd that Deuce is the one guy that keeps getting thrown out there and he's just also dominating all of these events, right? Like it's easy conversation because he's out there. Like you see him throwing the ball 71 yards, you see him vertical 42 inches, you see him run 4.3, you hear him 4.5, excuse me. You see him interview and he's engaging. And I just think he's such a electric personality, an electric football player that he's the easy guy to just kind of keep targeting as like, oh, that's the flip. That's the flip. Mm-hmm. When in reality, none of his actions and none of his words tell me flip. None of it. Like he has not talked about taking visits to anyone. He has not set a visit to anywhere. Like this isn't like a Juju Lewis situation where like Juju is committed to USC, quote unquote, but he's going to Auburn and he's going to Colorado and he's going all over the place. Like I understand why you're talking about Juju Lewis flipping. It's because he's obviously looking at all these different schools. Like that's a guy that's going to flip more than likely. Deuce, until he visits somewhere, he's not a flip candidate in my opinion. He's not. And if he changes at some point, then we'll talk about it.
Jose, the early signing period is still in December. So essentially they have to get through the season and into early December, I guess closer to mid-December.
Yep.
That's when the next signing period will be.
Yep. Well, unfortunately, I won't be here for the signing day.
That's true. That's true. You'll miss that out. You'll miss out on all this drama here. You know.
I'll tell you. I'll tell you this, Sean. I am not happy to be leaving, but one thing I am happy about is not deal with this type of chaos all the time. Man, it's gonna be interesting.
Absolutely. All right, last one I wanted to ask you about is another wide receiver. We talked about Meadows and Robinson earlier. Tanuk Hines, where do things stand with him right now?
I love Tanuk as a player, first and foremost, man. He's a kid that has run 10.4 in the 100-meter. He's run 27.1 in the 200. This is a track kid. And he's apparently timed in the high 4.3s in high school already. So he's a 4.39 type of kid as well. He can't miss in the sense of, first and foremost, you need to get a boundary receiver that can create big plays. But then secondary for me, Tanuk is the speed that you need in the wide receiver room. You need more of that, man. We know that last year, Tobias wasn't playing well. Braylon James wasn't able to get on the field. Deion Colsey got hurt. And then you're just like, where's the speed left, right? All you got is Chris Tyree, and it's his first year playing wide receiver. Like he's never played wide receiver before. So you can't depend on him being a consistent vertical element all the time. So I think Tanuk is big in that sense. Things are in a great spot. Like I've said this, that I think that Texas has been the main back and forth with Tanuk, Notre Dame versus Texas, and he's a Texas kid. He's a Houston, Texas Decaney kid. But I will say this is that there's another school, USC, that I think is also making a strong push near the end here, right? So it's Notre Dame, USC, Texas. Like that's the three. Okay. I think Notre Dame is in great standing. I think Notre Dame is the leader. It's ultimately, in my opinion, Sean, going to be about what drives the commitment in the end, right? What drives it? Is it where you feel like you fit best and where you're most comfortable? Because I think that's Notre Dame, I think. But then there's going to be push from Texas as far as you're a Texas kid, stay in Texas, and then USC, we know what that push will be, right? I don't need to say it out loud ultimately. So I think Notre Dame has a great chance. It's just going to be about outlasting the pressure that might be around him a little bit, and I think they can.
All right, excellent. Joe is following up on the signing period. Have they made it official yet that the early signing period is going to be next June? Have they done that officially?
So I need to do a deeper dive into that. I think it's still kind of an ongoing thing, but I think
that's what I thought.
I think the initial hearing was not passed that there will not be an early signing day next year. So we'll see if that changes or not. But I actually am not sure if that's even going to happen at this point.
All right. That's what I thought. It felt like it was kind of up in the air still. Like it obviously that was the big proposal and all that kind of stuff, but I don't think they've made it official yet either. I'll have to do some research on that as well. So,
Yep.
All right. Excellent. Well, of course, you can always find Ryan's stuff at irishbreakdown.com and all the super juicy details at the Champions Lounge, our premium board. So sign up and get a subscription right now. Our days are winding down, Ryan. We've only got so many of these left. What do we have? Like 2 or 3 at this point?
I think we have 2 more after this, man. So we got 2 more. Then it's the end of an era, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, I know. We're gonna have to break out the Kleenex. All right.
That's you. I know you're crying this weekend for Jesse, so you know.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. All right. Thanks as always, my man. I will talk to you again soon.
Absolutely. Thank you, Sean.
All right. Thanks, Ryan. We'll have some more Notre Dame football talk coming up in rapid fire in a little bit. But for right now, we're going to get into some Notre Dame women's basketball conversation. I was able to catch up earlier today with one of Notre Dame's newest members of the women's basketball team, Liza Carlin. We're joined by one of the newest members of the Notre Dame women's basketball team. She transferred from Marquette. Liza Carlin is with us. Thanks for coming in today. How are you?
I'm good. How are you? Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be on.
Absolutely. Great. I'm glad that you're excited. It's good to have you here. It was exciting when we got the news that you were coming from Marquette. How long have you been on campus now? Since, kind of just a few weeks, I imagine?
Yeah, so I moved in on June 1st. So almost a month now. It's been really fun so far.
Yeah. We were talking before we started. You've got a civil engineering degree from Marquette, and nice and challenging degree, I guess. For starters, engineering while you're playing sports as well. I imagine it had to feel pretty good to finish that up, huh?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, it was definitely difficult to do both, but very, very rewarding. So it was a great thing to walk across that stage in May to get that diploma finally. So it was good.
Nice. Very nice. What kind of master's program are you pursuing here at Notre Dame?
Yeah, so I'm actually doing a specialized master's in management. It's through the college, the business school. So a couple of girls on the women's basketball team have also done it in the past. Like Anna did it last year and had really good things to say about it. So it's a great 1-year program. Definitely wanted to get some business experience. So far it's going really well. A lot of great people in that program.
You're from St. Paul, Minnesota, of course, the Twin Cities and all that kind of stuff. Did you grow up a Lynx and/or Timberwolves fan? What was that like?
Oh, for sure. Definitely more Lynx fan. Just because when I was growing up, they were winning all these championships, and it was just a great time to be a Lynx fan. So yeah, definitely huge. Watched Maya Moore, Lindsay Whalen, Simone Augustus, all of them ball out, and still watch them quite a bit today. But yeah, it was a great team to grow up around for sure.
I can imagine. And, obviously, like you said, more Lynx fan, but, the Timberwolves, it took them a while to kind of get good again. But this was an exciting season for them this year, too.
100%. Yeah, I think they're just going to continue to get better as well. So hopefully Minnesota basketball is, headed in a good direction.
From what I've read, your transfer choices came down to Notre Dame, UConn, and USC. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I would say more UConn and Notre Dame.
Okay.
We're definitely like the final two. Took visits on both of those, and ended up landing on Notre Dame, which I'm really happy about.
So why Notre Dame? What did it come down to?
I think when I got on campus, I was just extremely comfortable right away. Extremely comfortable with all the coaches. The girls are great. I related to them very, very quickly. Could see myself in their system for sure. And then Notre Dame itself is just such an incredible school. I mean, the network you can get out of especially the College of Business, and then just the master's program was super intriguing as well. So I definitely love a good balance between athletics and academics, and Notre Dame offered that. And it's a great community. So I feel like there's no better school for me.
You talk about the fit with the coaching staff, and you hear that quite a bit, and it starts with Niele Ivey and trickles on down. What stood out about her and just kind of, some of the things that maybe you talked about when you came here and visited?
Yeah, I think there's not many coaches with women's basketball that can say that they won a championship at the school that they coach at. So to walk into the facilities and see Coach Ivey as a player, on the walls, and just knowing that she has that experience. And this year, our goal is to win a national championship. And she has that at the player level and at a coaching level. And she just embodies so much of what Notre Dame stands for. And it's really, really cool to see as a player that she can relate to us in so many different ways.
Well, you came from a successful program at Marquette with another Notre Dame alum, Megan
That's
Duffy,
right,
of course,
yeah.
was the head coach there. But you'd been to the NCAA tournament 3 times in your 4 years at Marquette. How much? This is a Notre Dame program that's had some success, been to the Sweet 16 the last 3 years, and obviously you go back farther than that. There's been a lot of success at Notre Dame. Was the chance to kind of make a deeper tournament run, did that play into it quite a bit as well?
100%. I think going back to my senior year, I was definitely on and off about, do I want to do another year of this, or do I want to just, I had a good year last year, just ended on a high note. And I think it was funny story, actually. The last game I played at Marquette was
right
at Notre Dame. So I remember kind of just looking around the gym before we played Ole Miss. And I was like, yeah, I want to stay in this. And then that was when I was like, I'm taking my 5th. And we lost that game, and that was the 3rd year that we lost first round. And I wanted to go further. I want a Final Four. I want a championship. I want to get to March and to know what that's like to experience. And especially, everything going on with women's basketball right now, it's kind of the sport to play right now. So I feel like it would be, silly of me to pass on that opportunity when I had it.
Well, it's interesting, but because obviously UConn is a pretty successful program as well, and you talked about it coming down to Notre Dame in UConn, and both have great home court environments. Did Geno, did he, and you'd played in that before as well, because obviously you're out there, you're in the Big East, you've played UConn before, you've beaten UConn before, but did he make ththings interesting for you in terms of trying to get you out there to stores?
Oh, 100%, 100%. And it's UConn, and being a women's basketball player, that's definitely the team you grew up watching, and so it was tough, but I think that Coach Ivey just runs her program in such a unique way, and I want to experience something very different. But yeah, it was definitely hard to say no to UConn. And then I played with Paige growing up as well, so that was also a tough decision. But when it came down to it, I had to go with my gut and choose what I thought was going to be best for me. So that ended up being Notre Dame.
Had you ever played either with or against anyone who's on the current Notre Dame roster, whether it's AAU or whatever it happened to be?
Yeah, it's funny. I was at home going through all my stuff, a few weeks ago, and my mom has like this huge album of pictures, and I'm going through them, and I come across this picture, and I'm guarding Kylie Watson at a EYBL tournament, and I was like, no way! Like I barely remember that. So
wow.
Yeah, it's funny at the college level, you definitely run into a lot of people that you've played before, and especially playing in the EYBL circuit a few years. A lot of those girls are playing at high level schools. So yeah, I've played Kylie for sure, and then I've played the programs that Liv and Sony were in, but I don't think I actually played them just because I'm older than them. But
sure,
yeah, small world.
Yeah, no kidding. I was wondering if you could kind of take us behind the scenes a little bit with the transfer portal, because it's become such a big thing. But I think that for most fans, they're sort of curious, like what that process is really like. So first, kind of the basic step. How do you go about, the decision to go in the portal, and then, what happens once you make that decision?
Yeah, the decision to go into a portal is a big one. And I think people underestimate how hard it is changing schools. You're so comfortable in the way that you've learned to do things, and you've become so acclimated to, how things are done, and you think that that's the only way they're done. But when you change schools, everything kind of flips. And there's a lot of hard conversations at your old school as well. And that was really, really challenging for me to, leave a program I was at for 4 years. And there's just a lot of great people within that program. But I knew what I wanted, and that came down to a championship. So then it goes, you enter your name in the portal. And, I think I put my name in like at 8 a.m. and I had calls come in at like 8:05, 8:10, 15.
Wow.
It's just like, yeah, it was a very, I want to say stressful, but also super exciting process. It was drastically different from my first time around in high school. My top 3 in high school were Marquette, Wisconsin, and Penn State. And this time around, it's like UConn and Notre Dame, and it's just completely different. So I think it's just super exciting to have all these conversations with these great coaches and make connections with, coaches and players that are at the highest level there is. And it's hard to say no to people, but it's also very exciting knowing what you want and knowing what direction you want to go in. And so definitely a little bit overwhelming, and you have a short timetable as well, so that adds on to it. But it's a really, really cool experience for sure.
So you're not just like doing like online chat or an email or whatever. You're literally getting phone calls.
Texts, phone calls, emails, and I mean, I felt very fortunate because there's not many teams I think that could realistically win a championship. It's probably like 5, 6, 7 maybe. And so I could eliminate schools right away, going just based off that. But yeah, I mean, it's saying no is never an easy thing. So yeah.
How many schools do you think you ultimately heard from through that process?
I have a list. I think it was about 48.
Wow.
But yeah,
it's got to feel good to be in demand like that, right?
Oh, for sure. It feels great. But yeah, like I said, definitely very different from the first time around. So yeah.
Had Coach Duff, obviously she's at Virginia Tech now. Had she already decided to make that move when you went in the portal, or was she still, kind of at Marquette? What was the timing of that?
I don't know all the conversations that were being had, but one of my teammates entered the portal, and then I did. I entered the portal, and then one of my teammates did a few days after me, and then we heard Coach Duffy was leaving the following week. It was very, very fast. I mean, it's hard at the end of a season, especially now with how the portal is. You just have no idea who's going to be on your team next year or not. And right. So there's a lot of uncertainty in springtime, and there's a lot of changes that happen. And you never really know, So it was definitely a quick turnaround. But yeah, I ultimately made my decision before Coach announced she was leaving.
So it sounds like just the biggest difference in being recruited out of high school versus the portal is just the kind of teams that you're hearing from. Is that it?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And you just also have a lot more time in high school. So, I mean, you started to get recruited, 8th grade, freshman year, and you have years before, you're signing. So this was a lot different. I think I had 4 weeks before I ended up signing with Notre Dame. So yeah, it's quick process.
No kidding. No kidding. Well, you averaged nearly 18 points and 8 rebounds a game last year for Marquette. You're an all Big East player there at Marquette as well. How would you sort of describe your game that you bring to Notre Dame?
Yeah, I would say versatility. I had such a blessing last year, kind of being that go-to player for Marquette. And the conversations I was having kind of with the coaches is, whatever you guys need from me, I think it's unrealistic for, all 5 of the starters to average 20, as fun as that would be. But I know my role for sure will look a little different. I mean, even training with these girls the last few weeks, the caliber of player, like I'm playing with incredible players, like the best in the country. So I think I bring a lot of versatility, so I can kind of play like the 4 or 5, potentially the 3 a little bit. I do have an outside shot, so I can stretch the floor hopefully a little bit for them, which will hopefully help our guards out a lot, just getting to the paint and opening up the paint a little bit more. And Notre Dame, how we're going to play this year is everyone kind of out on the perimeter and being very versatile. A lot of players play a lot of different positions. So I'm excited to be a part of that. And I think it'll be very exciting basketball this year.
Niele Ivey likes to run. I mean, you got the track shoes on every day pretty much already.
For sure. Yeah. We're getting in shape. So it'll be a fun year for sure.
Well, and as a forward, you talk about the guards. I mean, I can't imagine how exciting it has to be to have not 1, but 2 All-American point guards with Hidalgo and Olivia Miles in there.
For sure. 100%, Yeah, Coach Duffy, who obviously Notre Dame alum, so she knows the program pretty well too. We were kind of joking about, I'm gonna have the easiest job on the floor. I just gotta have my hands ready because I know my guards are gonna get the bigs the ball for sure. So it's exciting.
Well, what did they talk to you about, in terms of your role? Because you're gonna come in here now and you've got 6 different players, including Leah King transferred in as well. You've got 6 players, including yourself also, who have been first team all conference at one point in their career so far. Obviously only 5 can start. So what do you think that looks like for you? Or what did they talk to you about, it looking like for you?
Yeah, I think Coach Ivey keeps a very short roster for a reason. Like she does that intentionally. We're going to have a lot of people. We're going to have, short roster. Everyone's going to be able to play. Everyone's going to have an opportunity. I think, like you said, pace of the game. In order to keep that pace high, we're going to have a pretty solid rotation, regardless of what that looks like. I think another unique thing about Coach Ivey is everyone gets the green light. So, if one person isn't hitting one night or one person is cold, we have 5, 6 other people that are all scoring threats. So I think it's really going to depend on the game, depend on the matchup. We all have different strengths, and I think that it's going to be extremely hard for teams to guard us because of that. So I think it's going to be really, really dependent on the night for sure.
I think Maddie Westbeld was the position player who worked most closely with Carlos Knox last year. Is that kind of who you're working with the most, right, in terms of your position coach?
Yeah, I ended up coming to campus a week early before the team got here, and I just worked out with Carlos that whole week, and Coach Ivey as well. And then these last few weeks, while Coach Ivey has been coaching Team USA, Carlos has been doing all my workouts, and he's been incredible. I think that he knows so many aspects of the game. He obviously coached in the WNBA as well.
Yep.
And that's like a big mentality for a lot of the Notre Dame girls, is just everyone wants to play at that next level, and how do we get there? And still focusing on the task at hand, obviously here, but just developing your game at that next level. Carlos is super, super knowledgeable about, and that's been just an incredible opportunity to work with him, and it's going really well. He's been helping me a lot, so I've learned a ton just in the last few weeks, so it's been great.
Talked about Megan Duffy a little bit, and she was, obviously a point guard here at Notre Dame, and your coach at Marquette. She kind of had that reputation in her playing days of, like that feisty, fiery, scrappy kind of point guard. What was she like as a head coach?
Yeah, I think the same way. Incredibly, incredibly competitive. I think the really cool thing, kind of what I was saying about Coach Ivey, about having, players that have played at this level coach you, is like they understand the player's perspective of what it's like to be on the floor, and knowing reads and knowing, the stage a little bit as well. So it's really cool to have coaches that can get on the floor with you. I mean, when I was working out a few weeks ago with Coach Ivey, she would be passing, or I'd come off a ball screen and she'd be coming off and passing it to me. And, not a lot of coaches can do that and get on the floor with you. So
it's true.
Definitely she was very passionate, very competitive. And I mean, I expect the same thing from Coach Ivey as well. So
yeah. Well, I mean, you get to see Coach Duffy at Virginia Tech now,
yeah,
at least once this season.
that's
Are
great.
you looking forward to that?
Yeah, I think it'll be really exciting. I think also, just being at Notre Dame, it'll be really cool for her as well to kind of play her alma mater, and I know she's excited about that. But yeah, I mean, Virginia Tech is a great school. ACC is great competition this year. It'll be a fun conference to play in. And yeah, I think it'll be exciting to have that matchup for sure.
All right. Liza Carlin, new forward for Notre Dame via the transfer portal from Marquette. Liza, appreciate you doing this. A lot of great stuff. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. It was fun.
Did it again.
Every time.
I know. There's maybe been like one time that I haven't kept myself muted after the interview place. Liza Carlin, Notre Dame women's basketball team. And Irish Gordian out was slipping a question in there. With all this talent on the team, got to wonder, why are they being slept on so hard? And he followed it up with, he doesn't think that UConn, USC, or South Carolina is going to have more talent than Notre Dame. Well, I mean, they have all added some players in the transfer portal as well. I know that USC, if you remember, the point guard, Talia von Oelhoffen, who played for Oregon State, Notre Dame faced them in the Sweet 16. She transferred to USC in what was already obviously a very good team. And I know that I can't rattle them off the top of my head, but I know that UConn has added a transfer portal player or two as well. And obviously, I think they're expecting with another year of good health that Paige Beckers is going to be even better next year. So I think there's going to be, I think you're probably going to be talking about the top 8 or so teams going into the season are all going to feel like they've got a legitimate chance to be a national championship, a national champion. I think it's going to be as close probably as we've ever seen in terms of some of the top teams around the country this season.
But that's really how it should be. I feel like you should have in a sport like, in college sports with so many teams, you don't want everyone feeling like there's just a couple teams, that are going to go out and win the whole thing. I think that, there being more teams feeling that way is overall a good thing for the sport, is what I'm saying.
Michael wants to know what happened to your beard. Did you have to get rid of it now that you're a fiance?
No. I went into the office today, and our regional boss was in the office today. So I shaved. I shaved this morning, freshly shaved.
Anthony says he votes for a new Tuesday segment. Love advice from Jesse Stiers. I've always pictured Jesse more of a lover than a fighter. We were discussing your engagement earlier, and we mentioned it on yesterday's show. You were getting a lot of congratulations, and this is what people want to know, Jesse. I didn't want to give this up yesterday. I wanted you to be able to tell the story of how you popped the question.
I feel like I've told this story many times today, especially today, because I was in office for the first time in like a week and a half. But basically what happened was I had a golf ball, and it said, "Naomi, will you marry me?" on it.
You went golfing together. You were out on the golf course.
Yeah, so I had this ball pre-made, and then I put it in my pocket. I was going to do it around like hole 5 because it was just like a really nice hole. And the whole plan was I was going to play a different ball, get to the green, swap that ball out, and just putt that one in and have her get it out of the hole somehow. Again, I was trying on hole 5, but I didn't really get it done until hole 9 because what kept happening is she was getting her putts in before me, taking her ball and then getting out, going off to the cart. And then so finally on hole 9, we came up on it and I was like, okay, here's another good hole. There's like this really nice water in the background. And I finally got my putt in before, and I was like, hey, can you get our golf balls out of the hole? And she wasn't happy about it because it was like 95 degrees. So we're both sweating, blazing hot. There's like these bugs that kept like swarming around kind of because we were in like a really woody valley of West Virginia. And so she begrudgingly gets the balls out of the hole. And I'm like, hey, can you make sure mine is the Callaway? Because I knew I had to do something to get her to actually look at the ball And then she read it. And then while she was doing all that, gave me enough time to kind of, get the ring out, get on a knee. And again, there was like this water behind me in the background. So that's how it was done. But again, the tricky part is I was planning to do this on hole 5, and I had everything in my pocket from like hole 5 to hole 9, trying to be like, when am I going to get this thing done? So
I think Anthony, a lot of people are disappointed that you didn't do a whiteboard proposal.
would have been more fun, I guess.
Yes. Well, I tell you what, you're here. Let's do some rapid fire. What do you think?
Yeah, that's why, I ultimately get paid the most for my rapid fire takes. So
that's exactly right. I mean, by the way, slide your mic over a little. I feel like you're just a little bit off there, if you could. I don't know. My sound levels have been a little bit screwed up though anyway, so I don't know. We'll find out. Fill in the blank. Lindy's Magazine has an interesting quote from an anonymous coach about Fighting Irish head coach Marcus Freeman. The coach told Lindy's, quote, Marcus Freeman hasn't exactly been Newt Rockne over there. I'll tell you what, the real glue to this team is Al Golden. End of that quote. And that, Jesse, is blank.
It's misleading. And the reason why it's misleading is Marcus Freeman is a really good coach. And more importantly, he's a really good leader and a role model. But as we all know, when you become head coach, you are less in the X's and O's. You are the face of the program. It's kind of like almost like being a politician of a program, right? Like you are less involved in game plan, X and O things, but you are doing more of being the face of the program, recruiting, etc. And so it's very misleading because I feel like Al Golden has been the glue in terms of, the transition that Notre Dame is facing on offense. The defense has been holding this team together as the glue in terms of, overall play. But I don't think that has anything to do with, coaching ability on Marcus Freeman's behalf because of, the offensive shuffle that's been going around the last few seasons, the offensive coordinator, play calling. It's just been a little bit out of whack and obviously not up to the same level as the defense. And so that's kind of how I view that is Al Golden has been the glue of, I guess, more of the X's and O's side of things because the defense is playing at a high level.
To the defense. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. But there are a couple different things. One, I love John's response to this, absurd, and I think that's probably the best way to sum it up because it is absurd to make a comment like this. And like USMA 87 says, it's weak. If you're going to say it, own it up and don't hide behind anonymous. Well, I mean, I don't completely disagree with that, but the fact is no one's going to put their name to this kind of thing because part of this is the fact that they get to hide behind the anonymity of making this quote, and they know that it's going in a national publication, so they know that it's going to get out there. And I feel like it is basically like someone who honestly, I think that they probably think quite the opposite of this, that they actually, really are like the job that Marcus Freeman is doing specific to recruiting, because when you see the recruiting trend that Marcus Freeman has made and the imprint that he has had on this program, I think that this is probably somebody who's out there losing recruiting battles to Marcus Freeman and
some
Notre
turf
Dame.
wars.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And again, like no one's going to actually put their name to this kind of thing, and it's easy to go out there and hide behind that anonymity and make this kind of comment. And like Jackson Reynolds, who's a 2027 linebacker recruit, he retweeted this yesterday, and he said, couldn't disagree more with this take. Marcus Freeman has shown himself to be a leader of men during my spring visit. And you know that there are plenty more people who feel the same. And I think if you talked with anybody within the program, the vast majority are going to feel the exact same thing. Like you said, like Al Golden might have, might sort of be the glue in terms of the defense, but there's no one you're going to find over there at Notre Dame who's going to say, that Marcus Freeman isn't really the one who's binding this whole thing together. Like when you look in and you see, like we were talking recruiting to start off this show, and the firm commitment that Deuce Knight has had, the firm commitment that CJ Carr had for, a year and a half before he ultimately signed with Notre Dame. And you can go on and on and on. The reason a vast majority of these guys are at Notre Dame is because of Marcus Freeman, not in spite of Marcus Freeman. And this is USMA 87 says, I guess Narduzzi or Fickle, and Narduzzi is the first one who came to mind when I saw this. When I saw this quote, Pat Narduzzi was the first one who came to mind who I could think of making a quote like this, because he has always had a case of the whats when it comes to Notre Dame anyway. And I could easily see, and like Marcus Freeman, who did he get to flip? Kenny Minchie. Who did Kenny Minchie flip from? Pittsburgh. So I could easily see Pat Narduzzi being pissed off about this. DK says Narduzzi wouldn't hide behind anonymity. Well, I think in a case like this, he would, because again, it's easy to shield yourself. He doesn't have to, because that's what, when they go out and do these, the Lindy's and the Athlon, all these different national magazines like this, they like to get those anonymous quotes and they go, hey, tell me something about Notre Dame. We're not going to use your name, So I think that makes it very easy for a lot of these coaches to say this kind of stuff. But yeah. Narduzzi is the first one I thought of.
I think it'd have to be someone of a relevant program that.
Well, that rolls out Narduzzi then.
That's what I mean. I don't think Pittsburgh has enough relevance or success to really be kind of, firing from the hip like that. I think it's got to be someone who's a little frustrated and pissed off that Marcus Freeman is, getting a lot of these high-end recruits so early on in his career.
Yeah. No, I mean, DK, I don't disagree with you, because Narduzzi does complain about Notre Dame and the they're in, they're out, ACC affiliation and all that kind of stuff. And Brent is exactly right. Al Golden is executing Marcus Freeman's vision on the defense.
Exactly.
But it's not like Al Golden is floating around out there like some Svengali and like he's got his hands all over the team on offense and defense and everything else. Like you watch Al Golden, he's obviously coaching out there on the field, but he's a pretty cerebral guy. He's not the same. The personality that Marcus Freeman has compared to the personality that Al Golden has, they're a lot different. So it's not like Al Golden's got, he's the glue of Notre Dame's offense, and like he's binding this whole thing together. He's a great defensive coach and a great defensive coordinator, but that's not the role that he has with the Fighting Irish. So, Stanford Athletic Director Bernard Meir discussed the future of the Notre Dame Stanford football series on the Tree podcast recently. It is the official podcast of Stanford Athletics, and here is what the Stanford Athletic Director had to say.
We haven't signed additional agreements per se yet, but I've been talking to my counterpart there, and all indications are we want to continue that series. It's important to both institutions, and so I expect that we will be playing Notre Dame for quite some time to come. But we haven't announced the dates and times yet, and those type of things. But all indications are we want to continue to play the Irish, and really excited about that. Adding that to already going to be a very competitive 8-game ACC schedule should be terrific for us.
Have a lot of people in the chat who are overly excited, sarcasm noted, to hear Bernard Meir say that. So what do you think, Jess? I've talked to Vince a lot about this Stanford Notre Dame series. I don't think that we've talked about it, you and I. So what do you think when you hear Bernard Meir, the Stanford athletic director, say that?
I don't I hope that this isn't a wild take by any means, because I guess what I'm going to say is I don't mind the Stanford series, if that's what you want to call it, the continuation of playing Stanford. I think, like Navy, Notre Dame stood up for Stanford in a tough time, right? And I think that's why Stanford ultimately, has a lot of respect for Notre Dame. And I think Notre Dame has a lot of mutual respect for Stanford because of, being one of the higher end academic schools in the country. And to me, it's still a rivalry series. I'm big on the rivalry series. And really the series is close all time. Notre Dame is 22-14. But in the last, 14 years, it's just been 8-6. And from 2009 to 2017, Stanford won 7 of 9 games. And if you take away the vacated win, that's 8 of 9 games. So since Notre Dame has won, 4 or 5 since 2017. So, to me, this series is good football. It's not like it's lopsided. And for a while there, Stanford was taking it to Notre Dame.
Year, but I mean, yeah. No, I mean, that's true. I mean,
and they've prevented them from going on to big bowl games in the past. It's always, at the end of the season. And so whether you like it or not, I think what defines this series is even when Stanford's not great, or even when Notre Dame is, maybe in a down year, these teams can beat each other. I mean, look a few years ago, Stanford beat Marcus Freeman. A few years back when Brian Kelly was still here, Stanford, like a mediocre Stanford team, prevented Notre Dame to go on to a BCS bowl game potentially, where they finished 9-3 to end the season. So it would be one thing if Stanford was just getting rolled over every year and Notre Dame was just taking them to the dog shed, but I don't see that as the case. I see this as a friendly rivalry, 2 teams that have mutual respect for each other, and I don't see any reason to discontinue.
So a big part of the reason Notre Dame is, not the reason that this series started, but it turned into a good arrangement because of it gets Notre Dame out to the West Coast every year. And I know Vince and I have talked about this. There's a difference between getting out to the West Coast and what benefit that provides, and specifically getting to Los Angeles, because there's a big difference between getting to Southern California and Los Angeles and Northern California, obviously just outside the Bay Area in Palo Alto, where Stanford is located. How much actual benefit there is to that, I don't know. But Notre Dame obviously sees value in keeping Stanford around because of they're similar in terms of the mission of the schools, in terms of the academic mission of the schools specifically. And that's a big part of why Jack Swarbrick pushed to get Stanford included in the ACC and Cal included in the ACC. How happy, the ACC is about that, I think we'll find out soon. How happy Stanford and Cal ultimately are about that, I think we'll find out soon. But at least for now, it keeps them in a big conference. I've just never been that thrilled about this specific series. Like, again, if Notre Dame values playing a school, a program, a team with similar academic values, which they obviously do, okay. But, again, you hear Bernard Meir, who, by the way, was an assistant athletic director at Notre Dame. I guess it's been a couple of decades ago at this point. He worked under Kevin White here at Notre Dame prior to going out there and becoming athletic director. He went on, I believe, Georgetown before he ultimately headed out to Stanford a few years back. But my point is, so he's familiar with Notre Dame as well. To hear him say it, it sounds like it's, even though it hasn't been officially announced yet, we can expect to keep it announced. I wouldn't mind if Stanford just became a part of the ACC rotation. And I think a lot of people are kind of that mind. If it were part of the ACC rotation, I could see that. But if Notre Dame also wants to continue to make that trip out to the West Coast, that does make things harder. Even though I've said there are plenty of good alternatives, like work UCLA into the rotation, like sub out UCLA. They're a good academic school as well. I think they kind of get overlooked for some of their academics. But UCLA, Oregon, Washington, whatever it happens to be, Cal for that matter. Cal is out there. They're part of the ACC. Like there are other schools that I think that you could work into that
little
rotation.
ACC cycle.
Yeah. Or
West Coast.
If the West Coast thing is a priority, you've got UCLA, you've got Cal, you've got Stanford. You could go with those 3 right there. They're all good academic institutions. You could rotate the 3 of them in and out of there. And 2 of them are part of the ACC. UCLA, like USC, is part of the Big Ten. But it sounds like the series is going to continue. You seem to like it. I don't know exactly.
I don't dislike it. It's not like I love it, but I don't dislike it. I'm not out here advocating. But if you told me to pick one side or the other, I don't see a reason to be like, yeah,
sticking with
it. Yeah, that's what I mean. I'm not like, I don't have this vendetta or like this strong opinion that it should go away. Like when I look at it, like again, in my generation of playing Stanford, it feels pretty even. It's back and forth, and both teams kind of go on streaks. And again, my favorite part about it is there's always an opportunity, no matter how good the team is on either side, for them to win. It just feels like there's always potential for a good game and potentially an upset.
All right. So it looks like there's only one open slot on next year's schedule. And listening to Bernard Meir, this is the last year on the current contract Notre Dame and Stanford has. So listening to that comment that we just had for Bernard Meir, sounds like Notre Dame Stanford will be a go next year. And of course, next year is the year that Notre Dame would go to Stanford. So sounds like that's going to continue, even though Stanford is part of the ACC now. So get that to look forward to, like it or not. So JJ Redick had his LA Lakers introductory press conference yesterday. The first-time head coach was asked if there are any misconceptions about him that he's noticed in the coverage of his candidacy for the job that he wanted to clear up. And here, JJ Redick's response.
It's a valid question, and I've certainly heard everything. It's been a really interesting 6 weeks or so, just in terms of being part of the engagement farming industry. It's been really interesting. However, I don't really have a great answer for your question, because I really don't give a like, honestly. I want to coach the Lakers. I want to coach the team. I don't want to dispel anything. I don't. I want to become a great coach in the NBA, and I want to win championships, and I want my players to maximize their careers. That's all I care about.
So, Jesse, JJ Redick is apparently doing his Honey Badger impersonation. He don't give a bleep. So, do you have any problem with the response from JJ Redick there?
I don't have any problem. And I actually enjoyed his response because to me, what he's saying is, you're allowed and you can have these, so-called misconceptions of me. And I'm not actively going out of my way to dispel them or prove them wrong. But ultimately, my coaching ability is what's going to indicate, whether or not those are true. And that's what I'm here to do, is coach to the best of my ability, and not sit up here and tell you things of, what you want to hear, essentially. Like, I'm going to coach basketball, and at the end of me coaching basketball, you can come back to and decide whether or not these misconceptions, line up with what you have to say. So I don't know. I thought that I like that people ask these questions, because they're asking about, are you going to still do a podcast with LeBron? It's right. All coaching. You know what I mean? It's all coaching.
He's not going to do a Doug Gottlieb and do a podcast however many days. Gottlieb is doing an actual radio show every day. So JJ Redick is not going to do that. He's actually going to, shocker, focus on the basketball.
Right. And so that's ultimately what it's about, and what he's got to do, because everyone's questioning, his overall ability to be a head coach in the NBA. So what do? You coach and you let everyone else decide.
Yeah. And I mean, look, I'm not a pearl clutcher. I've been known to work a little bit blue off the mic, in terms of my own language from time to time, so it's not like I don't care that he dropped a couple of F-bombs there. It does feel like I thought a little bit about, now Charlie Weiss didn't come in using expletives and that kind of stuff, but Charlie Weiss came in the door defiantly, guns blazing, with the whole, you're going to have we're going to have a decided schematic advantage and all that. And Brian Kelly, in his first year, it wasn't at his introductory press conference, but the whole thing, when he decided to go for it rather than kick the field goal against South Florida, he's like, hey, get used to it, and that kind of stuff. He was like, when you're defiant early on, you're essentially challenging the media, and whether or not it has an impact, like the media, obviously, especially when you're in a market, number 2 market like Los Angeles,
This is a very slippery slope. Either it's
Yes.
going to go really well or really bad for you.
If
People are
you're
going to
gonna
come back to
challenge
this.
them, they
Right.
can push back.
They are going
obviously.
to either, when things are going bad, they will play off of this and come back to this. If things are going
Right.
well, people will have, more positive. Look at JJ Redick. He was able, he did what he said he was going to do. But that's a very slippery slope, and it's either going to go really well one way or the other.
Yeah, but the bottom line for him is, what benefit is there in it for him in caring about what people are saying about him? Everyone knows, and he addressed it in the press conference, everyone knows he hasn't been an NBA coach before. Everyone knows about his lack of experience. So what good does it do him to be concerned about what people are saying about it? All he can do is be as confident as he can in himself and go about his job and do the stuff that he was talking about. There's no benefit in it for him in caring about what people say, or any misconceptions that people might have. It is what it is. His lack of experience is what it is. There's nothing that thinking about it, it's not going to change any of that. So it is interesting, though, that they went from going after a two-time college champion to a guy with zero experience, even as an assistant. Yeah. Now, obviously, he's played in the NBA, so I do have to think that helps to some extent. But could you imagine? I mean, it's essentially, like even Notre Dame, when they hired Jerry Faust at least had head coaching experience in high school. I know Redick coached a little bit, I believe, in high school, after his NBA career was done. But even Jerry Faust had more experience as a head coach than JJ Redick has, going into one of the two most high-profile jobs there is in the NBA.
It's a huge roll of the dice. Yep. I think that's what makes it great. It's going to be very fun to watch.
Yep, exactly. Shams Charania has got to be feeling pretty good about himself, though, right now, because remember how people went after him when he was when he reported that there was interest in JJ Redick, and then especially when they were going after Danny Hurley, and everyone was going after him for making that report. Well, it came back around and turned out.
I think it was a big old smoke screen for both sides. Woj gets to break it, looks good. Dan Hurley entertains it, gets his probably contract boost, he's probably getting some more money out of this from UConn in some way, like when the Lakers come calling. So both sides win. How legit it was, that's not for me and you to speculate, because we'll never know. Like, we're not Rob Pelinka, and we're not the Lakers front office and Dan Hurley, but I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. And I mean, to be honest with you, there's a reason why Shams is probably the I would say more on top of things. I would say if I had to pick, which side I would be leaning towards, I would probably lean towards his side in terms of belief.
Yep.
Got it right.
All right, so we're going to continue down the coaches' post-game press conference and questions and comments.
This one's good too.
Interesting one yesterday from the College World Series after the championship game was played. Texas fired its head baseball coach, David Pierce, earlier in the day yesterday before Texas A&M played Tennessee at the College World Series for the national championship. So A&M loses to Tennessee. Post-game press conference after the game. Here's a question and the answer posed and responded to by Texas A&M head coach Jim Schlossnagle.
We're circulating today about a specific job opening. What do you have to say about your future in Aggieland?
I mean, I think it's pretty selfish of you to ask me that question, to be honest with you. But I left my family to be the coach at Texas A&M. I took the job at Texas A&M to never take another job again, and that hasn't changed in my mind. That's unfair to talk about something like that. That'd be like you asking Montgomery if he's going to sign in the draft. But I understand you got to ask the question, but I gave up a big part of my life to come take this job, and I've poured every ounce of my soul in this job, and I've given this job every single ounce I can possibly give it. So write that.
And then he got up and he left. That was the end of the press conference. For context, Jim Schlossnagle, the A&M head coach, was the head coach at TCU for several years before moving to Texas A&M 3 years ago. That's what he was referring to But when he was at TCU, he worked for Chris Del Conte,
who's now the
AD at Texas. So there's, more than just a job opening. There's a direct link to Schlossnagle. So was this question fair or foul? I mean, obviously Schlossnagle didn't like it. What do you think, Jess? Fair or foul?
It's a fair question, but it's a foul. It's foul when the question was asked, I think is how I would say it overall. I think there is a time and place for this question. After losing the literal last game of the college baseball season, game 3, the maximum amount of games that it can go to your rival in the SEC in a close game, where you came back, right? I just think it's not the moment or time to really ask that question. I think, just like for players, there's time for coaches to kind of heal, to process, everything that just happened, to celebrate what they accomplished this season. And so I think the question is fair, but I think it's a week from now type of question, not a right now, today question.
And I get that, but here's the problem. A week from now, you don't know that you're going to get a chance to talk to Jim Schlossnagle. Like, as a reporter in that press conference, like I would have a much bigger problem with the question if there was a pregame press conference like at noon, like you see sometimes, where the coaches will sit down with the media before the game. I would have a much bigger problem if it was before the game. This is after the game. I realize there's some emotion involved on Schlossnagle's part because he lost the game. And even, had they won the game, I think that would have even potentially made it even more awkward, because it's like, we just won a national championship and you're asking me about that. As the reporter, you don't know when you're going to get a chance to ask this question again. Like, that game could end and he could literally fly into Austin, or Del Conte could fly in to College Station today to talk to him. So, you don't know when you're going to get a chance to ask that question again. So I don't have a problem with it. Again, I understand Schlossnagle's emotion because he just lost a national championship game, but I think it's a fair game question. I understand why Schlossnagle's ticked off just because of the things that he talked about, but when your biggest rival fires its head coach earlier, a very successful head coach, by the way, David Pierce, in 8 seasons at Texas, took them to the College World Series 3 times, including 2 years ago. He's only missed the NCAA tournament once, and they fired him earlier in the day. And then when you have that happen, on top of the fact that you've got a direct connection between the Texas athletic director and the head coach at the biggest rival, I think it leads a lot of people to kind of jump to that conclusion. So I don't have a problem with it. Personally.
I see your side of it. And I would be willing to concede on that a bit, but
but Salty makes a good point as well, because it's not like Schlossnagle's going to sit up there and say, "Yeah, I'm going to talk to Texas tomorrow."
That's also a good point. I guess the only other thing I would say, or my complaint, is the guy who asked the question really kind of he was like you could tell he wanted to ask the question, but he didn't really want. I wish he would have asked it more defiantly. He was just
didn't come out and ask it right.
Yeah, he was just kind of like,
he beat around the bush. Is what he did. Yeah.
And he wasn't really speaking up,
There's
saying
an
it with his
opening
chest.
at a certain school.
Yeah,
that
would be my only other critique. Is if you're gonna do it, just be short, sweet, to the point, and get it, because everyone knows what you're talking about.
Yeah. Gordian Knott says, it's a question that you wouldn't have an opportunity to ask, but it's a stupid question. So why are you asking it in the first place? Because you're doing your job. I mean, as a fan, you might not like the question, but as a reporter sitting in that seat, a major opening came open earlier in the day that you're playing for the national championship, and you've got a connection there. So I don't have a problem with them asking. All right, stick to baseball. I mean, whether or not it's a stupid question is subjective. You might think it's a stupid question, but I think if you polled a good deal of the media, they're not going to agree with you.
Well, also at the end of the day,
I don't think it's a stupid question. I think it's a completely fair question because of all the, the things that I just outlined there.
I feel like your job as the media is also to get out the information that everyone wants to know. And so it is in the college baseball community. I guarantee as soon as Texas's coach got fired, there was a lot of buzz around immediately. Well, who could be the replacement? What makes a lot of sense? And unfortunately, the Texas A&M guy who's playing, for the national championship is the guy who fit the most.
Decaf says, anyway, Stifler takes the Texas job. If they fired a guy like Pierce with the resume he's got, sorry, they're not hiring John Stifler tomorrow. What you should be praying for is that, Notre Dame would make a run at David Pierce, but I don't think that's happening anytime soon either with the kind of money that he was making down there.
Well,
Texas.
the facilities as well.
Yeah. And
for a while, Texas baseball was like the bread and butter down there. Not Texas football.
When football was floundering for a long time. That's right. But, they're going to the SEC. Big expectations going into the SEC. I'll be curious to see where Pierce lands. Jesse, my question, sticking to baseball, a little bit grander scheme. Who is baseball's greatest living Hall of Famer after the passing of the great Willie Mays last week?
So I'm going to give you a fun answer. People might not like it.
Okay.
But my immediate, and everyone's going to say, oh, he's not a Hall of Famer. I know that.
Okay.
I know that.
I know where you're going, but you can give that, but then you've got to give an actual.
That's why I have that prepared. I have disclaimers.
Okay.
Barry Bonds would be my best active living player who should be in the Hall of Fame. Players who are actually in the Hall of Fame that are still living.
Willie May. I mean, Pete Rose is still alive as well, and you can go Barry Bonds and Pete Rose and say that they are arguably the two greatest living baseball players, but neither is in the Hall of Fame.
And then when I broke it down to players that are actually in the Hall, I did some extra credit. I did offensive and I did pitcher, but I think they're pretty equal with each other.
I went with one of each as well, and I'll be curious to see if we've got the same answer on these.
So pitching, I went Pedro Martinez.
Ooh, Pedro.
And I think you can make a case for like three guys in that slot. It was like Pedro, Randy Johnson, Greg Maddux. I think you could make an argument for all three of those guys. Roger Clemens. I just hate Roger Clemens.
Again, Roger Clemens, not in the Hall of Fame, though. So,
right.
Nolan Ryan and Steve Carlton. Those are two that I came up with from the pitching side. I didn't think about Pedro because I can, like, as great as I think Pedro is, I think Nolan Ryan and Steve Carlton, like top
200 wins, 2.9 career ERA, all of the postseason success. Like Pedro got even better in the postseason, and you could say he's a big reason why they won those World Series. So Pedro was my guy, and then offensively, I went Ken Griffey Jr.
At least we can agree on that. I went with Ken Griffey. I mean, 630 career home runs. His body broke down the last few years. I mean, think of the numbers that Ken Griffey Jr. would have put up, and we all consider him probably. I think that, again, when the names that you can mention, like Barry Bonds, A-Rod, Roger Clemens, like those three are the three most tainted players in terms of why they're not in the Hall of Fame. I think that Ken Griffey is probably considered, of that generation, of that era, especially the greatest clean player of that generation, assumedly clean player of that generation. But I think that you look at the fact that, the way his body broke down, even lends more credence to that fact that he probably wasn't on anything, because if he had juiced a little bit, he might have avoided some of those injuries or been able to come back quicker from some of those injuries.
Some other names I thought of were Ricky Henderson, Mike Schmidt. I thought of.
Yeah.
I mean, a guy, I think of Mike Trout, but obviously he's not in the Hall yet. But he's already up there for me of one of the greater players of all time already. I'm trying to think of who else I thought of. I did. I put a lot of thought and effort into this one, but I'm sticking with Pedro and Ken Griffey.
Okay. I don't mind. Pedro, great player, great competitor. Nolan Ryan, man, over 5,700 career strikeouts. I guess at the end of the day, Nolan Ryan basically known for strikeouts and no hitters, just because of the overpowering stuff that he had. But man, great player, and known to pack a punch as well. Just ask Robin Ventura.
Yeah.
So, Jess, while we were gone last week, Twitter made the move to make all likes on the platform hidden. Do you buy or sell likes being hidden now on Twitter/X, whatever you want to call it?
Yeah, I like that. I don't think people should actively be able to go, through your likes and be like, oh, this person likes this, or, like it pop up on the timeline and say, so-and-so liked this. I think that's what's retweeting is ultimately for, or reposting, however you want to phrase it, because you want someone to see that. Liking is just like, okay, I like that, but I don't necessarily want, everyone to know that I like that. And so I guess in terms of, I like my privacy. I think everyone loves their privacy. I think everyone's into different things. And so I don't see any problem with that.
Wouldn't you like to know, though, like who's liking your stuff? Like, shouldn't the person who posts it be able, like when they see the likes, shouldn't they be able to see who's actually liking the stuff?
I could see that one, because I'm thinking more so of there used to be a tab where you could go to on someone's page and it said likes, and you could literally just scroll through,
see everything that they've liked.
Right. I think that's
I don't
great.
mind them hiding that.
Right.
Yeah.
And I don't mind them hiding the part again where like sometimes a tweet pops up and it's like so-and-so like this, and it's someone that you're probably following. So, but in terms of something that you post, I think people who are liking it, are relative to if you follow each other, I feel like you should be able to see that like.
DK says your privacy ended when you got on one knee.
He's been really hammering these marriage.
He has, man.
One-liners.
What happened in your life, DK? Has your life changed in the last week since this momentous occasion last week, your big proposal?
Man, just raining on everyone's parade.
Has your life changed, though? Is life any different? Yeah, you.
Of course.
Since the last week.
Got engaged, and now I'm sad that I have to go back to work every day.
What's the Oh, you do? You have to go in every day now?
No, I'm just saying, like, coming back from vacation. So.
Gotcha. So any update on, like talks about where and when and any of that kind of stuff? Anything?
Maybe.
new?
I don't know if I want to spit it on these airways, because I think there'd be some wedding crashers in this chat.
Are you saying you don't want IB people showing up at your wedding?
I wouldn't want certain people showing up with bad intentions.
You could charge admission.
I don't think Naomi would necessarily enjoy that.
Make some money back at the reception?
I think she wants to keep it as small as possible.
Okay. Tommy says he wouldn't crash the party. Is that who
Father David is allowed? Father David is allowed. He can be there.
Okay. Father David was in here yesterday because we were talking about Canada because of my trip to Canada. But all right. Well, that's going to do it for today. Thanks as always for joining us. Thanks to Liza Carlin from Notre Dame women's basketball for coming in earlier as well. Great interview with her. And of course, if you missed it, it'll be up on the old YouTube channel or in the podcast feed as well. We will talk to you tomorrow. Hit that like button before you scram out of here tonight, and we'll talk to you later on IB Nation Sports Talk.